I'm just going to wait to see if John McKay arrives in the next couple of minutes or so. If he doesn't, we'll press on. If there are issues, because he's got a number of items on the agenda, and also he's going to respond to one of the questions from the members of the public. So we'll give him a few minutes, and then we'll start. So sorry about that. Yeah, yeah. Look, I think we're probably going to start. There's a question from a member of the public, which Ms. Sheriff, is it okay if I mean, because John's going to answer it. Obviously, if he hasn't arrived by a certain time, when he comes, let him settle down, and then he can answer your question. You're okay with that? All right, that's lovely. Thank you very much. We've got one from Mr. Grocock as well, so that's fine. Right. Okay, so let's start the agenda. Welcome everyone. Good to see lots of people here. Are we online, Steve? All online? Yeah, excellent. So just to remind everyone that it is being recorded and it is online. So yeah, so make sure when you do speak, and if members of the public are going to speak, probably best if they come up and sit at one of the two mics there, and then make so that, because that means that people who were listening or watching in can hear what you're saying. Otherwise, they won't. So anyway, we'll move on to agenda item 1, the minutes. Are you happy for me to sign as a correct record of the minutes of the 21st of February? All happy with that, members? Yeah, thank you. Agenda item 2, urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business that's coming forward. Agenda item 3, division of agenda. We will be dividing the agenda for the last item, and that is because we will be discussing financial arrangements about a contract with our leisure provider, Fusion, and as such, there's commercial confidentiality about that. So that's the reason why we're dividing the agenda there. I think there may be within the capital, depending on the details, if members want to go into the finances in the capital programme. Again, it's about contracts and the amount of money that we're spending on various projects that we need to keep private at this stage. Other than that, I don't think we will divide the agenda. Item 4, declarations of interests. Member, any declarations of interests on agenda items? Anything? If you suddenly realise there is one, let me know, or just come to our attention. Move on to agenda item 5, public question time. Sir, the floor is yours.
Further to my queries relating to council-owned properties in Sherford and St Anne's Chapel, will those in Sherford be retrofitted to align them with current standards? Are those at St Anne's Chapel so-called or actual? They were terms adopted by Councillor Brazil in an article I saw in the Totnes Times. Will they be so-called or actual affordable homes? What are the rents, and will they be available exclusively to South Hams residents?
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to ask my colleague Denise, who's the executive member for housing and all those matters, to respond to you.
Thank you.
And then if you've got a supplementary after that, far away.
Thank you.
Denise.
Thanks very much, Mr. Grocott, and thank you for your attendance here and continuing interest in housing matters at South Hams. The properties at St Anne's Chapel have received an Energy Performance Certificate graded B, with estimated running costs of £782 per year, equating to £65 per month. These are energy efficient, with corresponding low running costs for our tenants there. The properties purchased on the open market at Sherford are also EPC B, so both conform to current standards. As a council, we're dedicated to reducing our carbon footprint with an aim to get to net zero by the year 2030. We keep all our property portfolio under constant review with respect to the same and upgrades required to meet it, which will now include these additional houses. The properties at St Anne's Chapel have been allocated through the Council's Housing Register Devon Home Choice to people with a local connection to St Anne's Chapel or a neighbouring parish. They'll be let with affordable rents capped at the local housing allowance for the Plymouth Broad Market area, dependent on the property size. The open market homes can be purchased by anyone, however, we have imposed a principal residency clause to ensure they cannot be used for second homes.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I'm not used to being offered an opportunity to ask a supplementary, but a couple. The reason I included that those last few words about being available, what availability is for South Hams residents, is because I saw a programme on Southwest News, or a snippet on Southwest News about a couple, a mother and daughter, I believe, who were actually living in Saltash and were featured in this snippet as they were shown round their new home in St Anne's Chapel. And I wonder if that is in keeping with what you profess to be doing in helping residents of South Hams. That's the first question, and I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this without giving it a bit of research, but I'd like to know now, please, how many vulnerable families are there awaiting housing? I believe it was, can't remember because I didn't check this before I came, not expecting to be able to raise this matter. I believe it was 755 or 555 was the number that was made known last May, just before Liberal Democrats took control of this council, and I'm just wondering what that figure stands at now, please, if anyone's able to furnish me with that information.
Thanks, Mr. Grocock. We've got our head of housing, Isabel Blake, here, so she may be able to give you more information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding your first question around local connection can be through residents, through close friends and close family within the area, and also through employment. So they're the criteria that we consider within the local connection criteria. That's prescribed. That's part of the allocations legal framework that we have.
Okay.
So they would be in some way, if they weren't resident in the area.
They were employed in a cafe, I think, in Bigbury. I think that's what they said. Yeah. So
well, without going into
that falls into that
that word.
Okay.
We wouldn't comment individually on those things, but
No.
yeah, that's how the local connection criteria
Okay,
can be
fine,
be satisfied. With regard to your second question regarding numbers on the housing register, that's on public record. I can't quote you the exact number, but that will be on the Devon Home Choice website under useful information. All that information regarding
just to interrupt you, I don't use computers.
Oh, okay, all right then. I can find you that answer out. The other question around vulnerable families. Currently, we've got around 42 households in temporary accommodation, and I think 8 of those are families. None of them are in bed and breakfast. That is temporary housing awaiting allocation.
So when I quoted 555, has that figure risen, or has it remained fairly balanced, or has it decreased? What?
I will just find out for you. The number does stay fairly static. We have slight increases, and obviously we review the register regularly to make sure that that anybody who's moved out of the area or their circumstances have changed is addressed. But they are not all vulnerable people on the register.
Okay.
So they will be just seeking affordable housing.
I believe
in some way.
The word vulnerable is one that was quoted on a Liberal Democrat election leaflet, so that's why I've used that term. If it's not appropriate, then perhaps you could suggest another suitable term for those 555 families.
Look, thank you very much, sir. As far as the vulnerable is concerned, we are looking at our allocations policy, and we will be looking at special cases, particularly care leavers. We're trying to support them as much as possible. Ex-service people, because we feel that they are, again, another group of people that really need our support. And then, of course, obviously local families, because that's what we're here for. But so that's changing all the time. It's evolving as issues rise. But so I think the vulnerable. We've got our housing list. People who want houses, they're not always defined as vulnerable.
No, okay.
So, but
So
just one other thing. I just wanted to say something about the retrofitting and the current standards.
Yeah.
At this time, we are literally, as we speak, and I think it may have been done this week, we have responded to the government's latest consultation on the standards of what they expect houses to be. I have to say we're incredibly disappointed with what government have come up with.
Okay.
You know, we would have thought that at this day and age that they would be talking about carbon zero, but they're not. And we don't think they've gone far enough. And we've made that absolutely clear in our response to them. We will be looking at our joint local plan and issues where around we can make sure that we are above and beyond what we're asked to do as far as the current standards, building standards and regs are concerned. Anyway, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
See you.
Yeah, for giving me the opportunity to ask
That's all
the
right.
additional questions. Mate, one last thing. I usually have a copy of the response to my question
that'll
sent
be in
to
the
me.
minutes.
Will all of this also be included in?
We'll send that, sir.
So I have a written record.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Monsieur, John's here now, so please come up and ask your question.
Can I just
Sorry, John.
intervene there? Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong this morning in terms of my getting here, and
Including you getting here.
well,
No.
yes, I've only just got here, and in my panic, I prepared an answer to your question, which I then have left at home. I've asked my wife to email it to me. It hasn't turned up yet. I don't know if it's possible to defer my answer until later in the session, or I can just try and wing it.
Mitchell, do you want to wait for his statement? Or
I'm
do you
happy for you to wing it and then send me the summary afterwards. I'm really happy with that.
So
You can
John,
amend- yeah.
did you hear that?
Sorry, no, I didn't.
So Michelle's happy for you to try and wing it now, and then if you send, this is what you want to hear, and then if you want to send the full response to her later.
Yes,
in
I can
respect.
email
So-
you or
Yeah.
distribute it by whatever.
Anyway,
means,
We've
okay.
got.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, do you want to ask the question first? That's on the
Yes,
board.
and can I ask, am I able to do another 3 minutes of just expanding on my question?
Well, yeah, if you feel you want to, yeah,
Thank you.
go on.
Thank you. Right, my question is, plant-based diets result in 75% less greenhouse gas emissions than diets with more than 100 grams of meat daily. Brits eating meat-free lunches on weekdays could save the NHS 2.2 billion annually. Could South Hams join 25 councils, including Exmouth, by endorsing the plant-based treaty and expanding access to plant-based food? My little additional representation to you is, as you know, I've written to each of you recently asking the council to acknowledge the huge contribution that eating meat, fish and dairy makes to the climate emergency and the urgent need to increase plant-based choices wherever South Hams District Council has the opportunity. Scientists say that cutting animal products out of our diet is the single biggest way to reduce our impact on the planet. The amount of research over the years concluding this is now, quite frankly, overwhelming. In recent news, 650 academics have called on British universities to commit to 100% plant-based catering to fight the climate emergency alongside their commitments to ending the burning of fossil fuels. Both issues must be tackled if targets are to be met. Indeed, if we move towards plant-based, we will give ourselves more time to sort out the energy crisis. Meanwhile, the government is facing a legal challenge regarding its failure to introduce measures to reduce meat, fishing and dairy in its food strategy. It is ignoring the insistence of its own advisers that a plant-based food system must be the default option. Devon has a large family farming and fishing community. Genuinely supporting farmers means looking honestly at the future and recognising where change is necessary. At the moment, farmers are forced to keep doing what they're doing by subsidies, but continuing with the status quo is a betrayal. We need to support them to grow vegetables and crops and to rewild in order to give them financial security and ourselves food security. It is not always easy to find plant-based options in cafes, public buildings and schools. Whilst not asking people to make individual dietary changes, we still urgently need to provide plenty of choice and availability of healthy, plant-based food. The Council has the opportunity, and I think the duty, to simply prioritise plant-based food options wherever they can and treat the climate emergency with the urgency it requires. Our children and grandchildren are depending on us to make the right decisions that will give them a safe future on a sustainable planet. Many other councils around the country and cities all over the world have already passed a motion to raise awareness of eating more plant-based foods and talking about its benefits. It is the logical and necessary step after declaring a climate emergency and shows that they take climate change seriously. Will South Hams Council do the same? Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Well, I've just had a text from my wife saying it's been sent, but it's clearly sitting in Minecraft or somewhere like that, waiting to be approved. So if it does turn up, then I'll revert to that. Okay, where to begin? My interpretation of your question was really about around the plant-based treaty. which I've got a lot of sympathy for in terms of recognition of the fact that meat-based production is a huge cause of methane across the globe. Yep.
As if by magic.
Just as if by magic. I mean, perfect timing.
Although I was enjoying you winging it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me read this out. It is quite lengthy because I felt it did require a proper response, because I know this is of concern to a lot of people. So I support many of the aims of the Plant-Based Treaty, and I accept that there is a need to reduce meat consumption both from an environmental and a health perspective. I also accept that methane production from livestock farming globally is a huge damaging issue, and there is a lot of science to support that. But I'm afraid that I disagree with the premise that eliminating livestock farming, or even trying to, is a reasonable and practical means of addressing the problem. However, many of the clauses in the treaty the Council have addressed or are actively pursuing. So, for instance, and this is just a short list, the Council declared a climate emergency back in 2019. It is working with partners to deliver training on sustainable regenerative farming methods to approximately 40 farms, I think, at the moment. Through its partner Natural Landscapes, ANB as was, it is delivering a comprehensive programme called Farming in Protected Landscapes, which is all about reducing emissions and improving biodiversity. The Council is involved in purchasing land for tree planting and creating rich and diverse habitats. It is working with the food and agricultural sector across the district and beyond to increase local food production and consumption, shortening supply chains, making local food more accessible and cheaper, and thereby increasing health and well-being. A natural corollary of this, I believe, is there will be a reduction in meat production and consumption, but it is not a primary ambition. So with regard to the central theme of the treaty, it suggests that we should all move to a vegan diet, and I really cannot go along with this. Firstly and foremostly, I think it's impractical, and secondly, because there are serious health questions around a vegan diet. The impracticality stems from the fact that South Hams has many livestock farmers, and I and many of the partners the Council is working with need to engage with these businesses. It is absolutely essential to be able to work collaboratively to help them transition to more sustainable methods of production. It is my view that by being a signatory to the treaty would not help that dialogue. The health issues are also a concern, as there are quite a few. Clearly, the issue around B12 is an obvious one, an essential vitamin that mediates neurological and blood-related functions. I could go on, but I mean, I know that there are plant-based sources, algae, yeast, shiitake mushrooms, but the bioavailability is questionable in many respects, and I know that there's also various microbe-based products, like there's a thing called Nature's Find I know of, but it's all very early days with all of that. There are other things like iron. The non-heme iron from plants is not biodegradable. It can be improved with vitamin C, and if you remember Popeye, olive oil should have told him he needed to add a squeeze of lemon on his can of spinach, because otherwise he wouldn't have got any benefit from it. There are also bioavailability issues associated with plant-based sources of zinc, calcium, vitamin D, and others. The consequences of these deficiencies can, I agree, be well, it can cause a whole range of health issues. But I would agree that all of these can be managed, and people do, and live perfectly healthy lives on a vegan diet. But it is not a practical universal solution, in my view. George Monbiot believes we could all live on lab-grown meat, and you know he's a good journalist with some very innovative and interesting ideas. But I don't think that this is one of his best. Also, I have to say, and this isn't trivial, because I think it does damage the credibility of the treaty. The fact that it is referring to and links to a section on vegan cats and dogs. I think the idea of a vegan cat is just, well, it's actually cruel, in my view. And the supporting references I've looked at, and they're not at all convincing. They're self-referential, self-selecting, and appear to be funded by those that are interested in the outcome. They want to sell plant-based foods for animals. I do, however, support many of the plant-based treaty aims of the plant-based treaty, especially where they relate to animal welfare, which for me is a big personal issue. The UK is one of the leaders in the study of animal sentience, but despite our growth in our understanding of this area, there remains farming practices that are utterly abhorrent, to me anyway. I'm a big supporter of Compassion in World Farming and have worked with them in the past to confront the rise of enormous 1,000+ dairy herds held in a shed for the whole of their natural life, which is not that long. North Devon has become a hotspot for this in the UK, and they are dreadful operations. The methane production of large indoor zero-grazing dairy, pig and poultry farms is enormous. Slurry lagoons uncovered the size of a football pitch is then spread on fields, releasing emain, sometimes 5 silage cuts a year, with all the consequential pollution and soil absolutely devoid of life. Tackling that really huge issue from the point of view of methane production is where I think we should be concentrating our efforts, because it is a massive problem. So finally, I would say there are about 318 second-tier councils, first and second-tier councils in England. As far as I can see, only 3 councils at that level have signed the treaty, which represents about less than 1% take-up. And I think it's actually a great shame that the treaty has gone just too far, and a more practical, less full-on vegan approach would have received a lot more support. And so, you know, I have a problem with it because of that. And so I can't recommend to the council that we sign this treaty, but it may be for others, other members, you might be able to persuade them to bring a motion to the council for debate, but certainly that is my position.
Thank you, John. Very comprehensive response. Michelle, do you want to ask a supplementary?
I just want to say thank you for the amount of work you have done and for bringing up so many really, really valid points. And anybody can individually sign up for the treaty. Oh, sorry. I just want to say thank you, yes, for the amount of work you have done there and for highlighting so many of the very, very important points that animal agriculture are creating for our planet and for the sentient animals. Anyone can individually sign up as a councillor to the plant-based treaty, but I think for me, I'd be so happy to see the progress that appears to be being made, that you are working towards all the goals we've talked about, and even if we get 90% there, it's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That's great. I'm just I'll give Jackie. I mean, normally we wouldn't allow this, but Jackie's the leader of the Greens here at Southam, so we're always pleased to hear her point of view.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to raise the fact that we have actually brought this to full council before. I think it was myself and Councillor Rose that brought it about a year or so ago, and the outcome was that we would actually look at what we have in house. So, in other words, doing from a leadership point of view, that we practice what we preach. And now, when we do have our sort of like the food, sometimes occasionally with meetings, there's always a plant-based option. And I just wanted to point that out, that there has been a shift, and I think it's to be welcome. So there is choice, and I think that's the early steps for everybody to kind of perhaps try things they don't always try. Absolutely. So just to let you know that. Great.
No, thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for raising it, because it gives us the opportunity to discuss it, which absolutely is of vital importance to all of us and the residents of the Southam. So thank you too. Right. We will move on to item agenda 6, which is the executive forward plan. Members, you've got that before you. Are there any questions, queries on the executive forward plan? Jackie will be pleased to see there's the free ports coming up. Yeah, sorry, Jackie.
I just wanted to point out that it looks like my job is done as of today.
Is it?
But other dates, just today.
Sorry, it's on that. No. Well, there's nothing for you to say in the meeting coming up.
Not that. No, it just looks like from the forward plan. It just looks like that. You know, there's the role finishes today. Sorry,
So
I'm not
perhaps,
speaking very
perhaps I can
clearly.
help, Leader. We do need to go
Just,
through.
just saying, you know,
we do
because
need to
normally
go-
you see what's happening next.
Yeah, we
I'd
do-
just like to point out there's a whole lot of composting that's
Yeah.
going on that's not on there, and I just want to alert people to the fact that it's, you know, my job is just starting. not
Your
finishing.
job is definitely not done, Councillor Hodgson, and I did notice myself that the full plan is rather front-loaded in terms of all the items we have before us today, and then a few others. We will do a more comprehensive review, and we will build it back out again for the start of the next year. So don't fear not.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to pass over to Darryl.
Can I just add as well to that, that the calendar of meetings hasn't been set for 24-25, so it's going to council in March. So once we know those dates as well, we can populate the next 12 months ahead.
Right. Any more for any more? No. Item agenda 7, waste and recycling services update. Jackie, very much not done. And you know, and can I say personally from you know, thank you for everything you're doing on community composting. You know, not necessarily the most sexy of subjects, but you know, so important. And you know, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Well, to that last point, I would just say each to their own, Julian. You know, some people really find community composting a very stimulating and engaging thing to be involved in, and I think that's fantastic. And we wouldn't be where we are with our community composting if we didn't have people that felt like that. But just to go back to this particular report, which is looking at what's happened with our waste recycling service, this is the focus on the recommendations today. And I just wanted to say this is a very long-awaited good news story and well worth waiting for. And perhaps a year ago, we maybe thought this wasn't going to happen in a hurry. For me, it demonstrates the value of a stronger working practice of in-house services rather than the commission services. And our own officers have managed the transition from commission services to in-house waste collection fantastically. And I think, you know, there's been a whole team out there. I don't diminish, and I'm really aware that there are people who have had some issues and they've brought them to our attention, and they've been, you know, quite sort of picky issues. And I don't diminish the frustration of those people, and who've raised complaints with us, and they are fortunately a very small and diminishing number. And again, our officers have been well prepared to actually address the issues that have come up, because it's always going to be an issue when you start rejigging the services and rejigging the rounds. So I commend this report, and I hope that everybody will support the recommendations. And I'm aware that now we're going to get some information, perhaps from Sarah. Is you going to give it?
Yeah, Sarah, if you want to. Thank you, Jackie. And you're proposing those recommendations.
I am absolutely proposing
we're only
them, yeah.
recognising
Thank you.
really. So, Sarah.
Well, there's a surprise. I wasn't sure what I am presenting. Yeah, I guess I just echo what you said, Councillor Hodgson, in terms of being, I guess, a council-wide team effort. This goes much wider than just officers within the waste team, and there's been a real support from everything from IT to assets team for infrastructure and various other things. But yes, I think we are in a period now of stabilising. So all the minor issues there you've alluded to, Councillor Hodgson, we are working on. So we're not quite there yet, but we're anticipating that the performance should be back to the required standard by April, if we continue that piece of work. So I'm not sure anything else you want me to say there, Leader.
Can I just echo what you said, Julian, when you were talking to Jackie? I think the work is very much not done. That we've done the basics of getting everybody to the same service level, and there's still a huge amount of work to do. Yourself and I and Sarah were with the crews in Ivybridge and Tor Quarry. You know, they were echoing some
at
of those.
6:30 in the morning.
At 6:30 in the morning, yeah, I'll make that point. And the leader was early at Ivybridge at 6:15, just to make that clear to everybody.
I didn't turn up.
So Sarah got stuck in the mud for one, and we did it by ourselves. But
Thank you.
You know, so but on that point, you know, there are lots of tweaks to make. There's lots of refinement to make. There's still a huge amount of work to do to make sure that it's as cost effective and as efficient as we possibly can make the service. And that's just the starting point. And then it's looking at how can we improve that? How can we make it easier for residents? And the whole game here is about reducing the amount of waste produced. That's the waste hierarchy, which is reduce the amount of waste. If you can't reduce it, recycle as much as possible. But we should always be looking to reduce. And that's the whole ethos around community composting is you know, you compost at home. You don't actually need us to go and collect your garden waste service because you can compost at home. You reduce the amount that goes in your residual, and anything else you recycle if possible. And we need to really start to hammer home those messages with members of the public and our communities as we go forward. That's all I would say.
No, thank you, Steve. I think that's very important.
If I could
Jackie.
just come back and just say thank you, because this is the kind of response always around what's going on with waste. We've got very competent knowledge and in-house officers working all the time on this, and so this idea that we've now sort of done that big jump so everybody in the district now gets the comprehensive waste service means that there's actually a lot more interest in waste. And so the idea of, you know, the community composting, which obviously we're able to roll out with Sustainable South Hams and their excellent team, and we shouldn't forget those in all of this. But the other side of it is that you know, there's been a lot of approaches around what we can do in the town centres and where we might be able to help with commercial waste. And I think that for us, I'm hoping that might be a nice little learner for us, actually. Why wouldn't it be? And actually benefit our town centres too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any more, John?
Yeah, two questions. Item 1.5 of the report, where it says the council's current recycling rate is 44.5%, with Devon-wide target of 65%. My first question is directed to Mr. Molyneux. I've asked this, put this question to him on several occasions, I think for the last 12 months. When are we going to remove the sign that says we recycle 60%? That's been there for quite a while. So that's my first question. And the second question is, what steps are we taking to reach the target of 65%?
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I wasn't aware of the sign, so I assume the answer to that is immediately. We will get rid of that one. And the answer to the wider question around improving recycling rates, I guess I echo a little bit what Steve said around reducing, and because it's not all about upping those recycling rates in its entirety, it's about reducing the residual waste. So we have seen an impact on that actually quite early on. It's only the first quarter, but we have seen the overall amount of residual waste presented reduce ever so slightly, and I'm hoping to come back to a forum in the coming months to update you on that. But in terms of the increase in recycling, we've just engaged with our wonderful comms team about an overarching strategy here about what we can do to improve recycling rates. So we're gonna I guess improve on the road shows that we've been doing. So when we were doing the rollout of the curbside service, we did a lot of road shows, lots of community engagement, and of course involve yourselves in that as well. There are a lot of things we can do Devon-wide. So speaking to Devon County Council, we pay a top slice contribution to an educations officer, which we have been quite reluctant to have in the area of recent months, because of obvious reasons. But now that lady, I think it's a lady at the minute, is due in to come into the South Hams, and we can look at what in community engagement and the messaging we want to promote. I think a lot of that should be around the food waste. I know from speaking to the crews that quite a lot of residents are still not presenting their food waste at the curbside, and I don't know whether there's some barriers there we need to unlock, whether there's further engagement we need to do. But yeah, that's where I see sort of our education in the first instance. If we can get that out of the residual, that will instantly improve recycling rates, as well as looking at things around the Environment Act, the plastic strategy we've got to look at. And yeah, there's lots of things actually. And what's really encouraging for me, and speaking to Councillor Hodgson there, is we can build a sense of excitement here around improving those rates, given that we've been through this lull for quite some time. And actually we're now looking at what I would call the nice things, actually. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you very much.
Just come back as well, just to say.
Very briefly, because I've got a number of people who want to speak.
Just to say about how you actually do the metrics on measuring recycling. If you're doing your recycling really, really well and you're following the waste hierarchy, your recycling rate actually goes down rather than up. You know, because you're actually getting people to sort of reuse, repair, and all of those things, and it's very difficult to quantify some of those metrics. I'm not saying I'd like to see this 100%, obviously, because that'll be the residual waste dropping. But it's the metrics are changing all the time. Don't forget, just since Christmas, the beginning of this year, there's been a new bit of legislation which has brought in a whole load of construction waste is coming in for recycling, which was kind of slightly different. I mean, it's been done free now, as it was supposed to be paid for. You can get rid of it from DIY position. And so there's a lot of changes, and I've actually asked at county, because they do a lot of the assessments, to actually start looking at those assessments better, so that we take into account what's going on, for example, at Refurnish. You know, because they do their landfill tax, but it's not quite, you know, they don't measure every settee compared to if that was coming in. So I'm not making excuses about the reduced light number, because I'd love to see the objective actually being at 74, which was where Reading was in the mid-90s, would you believe? But I think it's, you know, I think it's something that we need to just bear in mind. It's not necessarily what you see there isn't the full picture at the moment, and I think that's something we can look at better.
Can I just quickly? I think what if I was a resident? I am a resident, but that sign saying 60% recycling has been there at least 2 years.
Okay,
yes?
well,
yeah, no. The point is, I think what people are expecting is that we should get back to that rate. There have been reasons why we haven't been able to achieve it, and we all know about those. But if we're not going to get to 60%, then, as Sarah said, that sign needs to be removed sooner rather than later.
I guess I just think we might be there.
Right. Look, we've got a long agenda, so I want people to keep it brief here. I've got a lot of people who want to speak here. I've got Jonathan, John, Denise, Sam, Nikki, Mark. Everyone wants a go of this. It is, to be fair, it's a very, very important. It's the main service that we deliver to all our residents. So absolutely, people should have a big interest in this.
Thank you, Julian. And first of all, I'd like to thank Sarah and the team again, as we all do, for all the hard work and effort that she puts into this. I think it is really down to Sarah and Steve why we are where we are. You can hear the enthusiasm Sarah's got for waste, which when she ever does a presentation, which is slightly sad, but it's also very, very enthusiastic. And it's a great shame that our previous contractor didn't have the same enthusiasm to actually do the service which we all wanted. And we can't go any further. Composting projects, yeah, I think they're fantastic. And if only we could get more of our parishes to come forward with them. We've all got to work to achieve that. In the last 4 years, we put a lot of money into composting projects, but sadly only one ever came forward, which thankfully is in my ward as a county and Sam's ward in Malden. Come on, parishes, step up. Let's see if we can do some more of these, because it's really very good. And I really want one in Dartmouth, and I'm really trying to get one to sort out in Dartmouth. Can I go through a bad news story? Sorry. Road sweepers. We're constantly being got at. Last night I was at Dittisham Parish Council with John, and we were both badgered about the state of our road sweeping in the South Hams. It is a long-running issue. It has got to be resolved.
Jonathan, can I just stop you there? Because,
sorry, of course.
Because you've gone off piste.
Yes.
This is about wasting. This is about waste and recycling.
Right,
and
can I
community
go back
composting? Because you're absolutely right. I agree with you entirely, and it's something that we're on now. But we needed to sort out the waste first, and then we're absolutely coming in. And you'll be very pleased that Sarah will be involved in that as well. So
I'm delighted to hear that. Yeah. And I thank you very much for that. And I did go off piste, and I know I shouldn't have done that, but I had to do it. Get on with it. Sounds like Judy. Recycling centres. Now we're supposed to be working more closely with Torbay in this devolution. Are we ever going to be able to get to the stage where some of our residents that are nearer Torbay to actually use their recycling centres?
I think that's a very good point, Jonathan, and it's something that we can certainly raise within. I mean, we've got a briefing on devolution this afternoon, so it's a question I think for there to ask the officers that will be there explaining. But thank you, John.
Yeah, I mean, at the same parish council meeting that I was with Jonathan, also one of the parish councils is the ex-leader, John Tucker. And it was during his tenure that that 60% went up. And he actually asked, has the accounting methodology changed with regard to recycling that explains why there has been a drop? And I just wondered whether there was some subtlety in that.
I mean, I'm not absolutely sure. What I do know is that Jackie and I sit on the strategic waste group at County, and it's something that we look into and are going to look into very carefully. But I mean, Sarah, I don't know if you've got a technical.
I don't think it's particularly technical, leader. Thank you. As far as I'm aware, no. I can go away and check that. We have to remember in terms of reporting from the DEFRA, there's always a lag. So the figures you see from that have been published now are from when we had all the challenges in terms of not collecting the green waste, food waste wasn't in for half the district and so on. So all of those things impact that, and there's always a lag in terms of reporting. When we see from when we brought the service back, and particularly around the improvements, when that data's published sort of a year in advance, then we should see that increase. But that's the only thing I can think of, Councillor McKay. I can go back and check that though.
Thanks, John. Nikki.
Thank you, Leader. I won't go and do the, well done and everything, because we all say that time and time again, and it really is meant that this service is really coming into its own now, and thank you, everybody. The one caveat I have, and it's such a shame that we had a £49 charge for garden waste, which I disagreed with when that was brought in. It's now gone up to £52 if you register before the 1st of April. And after that, £55 a year. I think with the cost of living crisis, to go up 12.5% to be in one is a lot of money, and not necessarily a way to encourage people to recycle garden waste. And although I know the take-up was very hot in the first few weeks, and I'll be interested to see the figures moving forward when we know who's paid for the service for the year. But at the moment, so disappointed with the climate we're in with cost of living, that prices are now 12.5% higher than they were last year. Thank you, Chairman. Leader, whatever you want to be.
Fine, you call me whatever, Nikki. That's fine. I don't know. Do we have any figures on the take up of?
Leader, last time I looked, and Sarah is trying to find the latest figure, I think we're around about 60% of our total subscription people had resubscribed. So bearing in mind the service doesn't start until April. Where we go?
6,385.
So we've got 6,385 subscribers now. So we're about that 60%. So
okay. So yeah, I mean, no one likes putting prices up, but we just feel that in order to have a financially sustainable solution to this is what we're doing, and we're hoping that if Jackie's successful, we won't have to do it at all, because it'll be community composted. I'll leave it there because I want to get on. Yeah, but thank you, Nikki. Denise, then I got Sam and Mark.
Thanks very much. Yeah, just to add to the congratulations on turning the service around so dramatically after the disastrous privatised version that we had for a while, too long. But there we are, we'll leave it there. Just touching back on what Jonathan was mentioning, looking ahead at 5.4, the service will undertake a review of its wider services such as street cleansing, street cleaning. Can you tell us more about the street cleaning plans? Because it's something that, or is it too early?
We're not going to do that now, because this isn't about that, and it is something that we know we've got an issue with, and we are very much turning our attention to that now.
Okay, that's fine.
But I don't want this debate to widen out into street cleansing.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Sam Dennis.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to ask, is there a continued need to suspend the garden waste service in the winter for 4 weeks? Or can it be run 52 weeks of the year going forward?
Steve, do you want?
Yeah, so the reason we do that, Councillor Dennis, is partly because that's the time when we get the most residual waste and recycling. So we use those, so it's the lowest time in terms of garden waste being produced and collected, and it's the highest time for the residual and the recycling. So the resources that we have for those 4 weeks get diverted to support the other services. So it's something that pretty much all the councils across the country, certainly in Devon, do. In fact, Plymouth suspend it for a period of months rather than weeks. We think that 4 weeks is the low season in terms of garden waste, and it's the highest time for all the others. So we think it's a good use of resources, and it's the lowest impact to people who subscribe to the service. We've not had any complaints from residents about that 4 week period.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Thank you, Steve. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the things I will say is the thanks have also got to go out to the teams and the guys, girls, women working on the service, because they are responding to issues, I know, as they come up when they're approached by residents. And I think the response, I've got to say, the response, the friendliness, the attitude of the staff has, is really making an impression on residents. There are still issues, we know that, but one of the things I will say is when the issues have come up and I've had to put them in, they've been responded to very quickly, very promptly, and again, to the satisfaction of the residents, who are surprised that the speed and level of response that's come out, looking what happened previously. So I think there are thanks there. I would make a cry, and I know, Chairman, you've said the review is underway for the commercial waste service to be reviewed, because I think that's an area that we're missing a trick on. And also, I look forward to working with the team on the review for the support in the coastal areas during the holiday periods for street cleaning and the waste collections and localities. And I think that's a very important thing that we need to do. But Chairman, I think we're moving in the right direction, but there's an awful lot more work to be done. And I'm confident that the teams are there to do it, and we've got the crews to do it as well. And I think there is, we've shown that we can turn things around. And it's very important that we just continue this, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Any more for any more? It's been proposed by Jackie. I'm happy to second it, and also to add my thanks to Sarah, Steve and her team, the crews that we've got out there, but also members of the residents of the public and how they've responded. They had great patience, and now I'm very determined that we'll be top of the pile when it comes to recycling in the near future. So can I just have a show of hands for all those in favour? Thank you. That's
unanimous. Thank you.
Right. Agenda item 8, the Plymouth and South West Devon Joint Local Plan 5-year review report. Thanks, Sarah. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Members of the Exec, if you look at the recommendations on the screen, which I'm sure you've read many times already, you will see why this report is a really important milestone in the Joint Local Plan progress. Following a comprehensive review, the 5-year review clearly sets out that our JLP remains up to date and sound and can continue to be the starting point for making planning decisions based on our local planning policies and a strategy going forward. I'm sure members will be aware that there are very many changes taking place nationally which are going to change the planning system following the publication of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. We're still awaiting the secondary legislation to set out the process by which our joint local plan will be reviewed and developed going forward to ensure that local matters continue to be at the heart of our planning strategy. In the intervening period, knowing that our joint local plan continues to be here to secure the right development is delivered and to provide a framework to help resist inappropriate development is really important. This was considered by the Joint Local Plan Board in February, and the recommendation was unanimously agreed that the Board endorse the draft JLP 5-year review report and support its passage through the decision-making process of the 3 councils concerned. And as such, I would strongly urge members to support the recommendations set out. I'd end by thanking Mr. Wagstaff for the tremendous amount of work that he's done on this. And indeed, at this stage, I'm also going to thank him, as we're at the Exec, for his time at South Hams, which I know is drawing to an end, very sadly. But he continues to be a fantastic advocate for the joint local plan and indeed for the planning process at South Hams. And I know that will carry on for the rest of his time here.
Thank you, Dan. Members, you've got the report before you and the recommendations. I think that Dan's made quite clear how important this item is. Comments, Jackie.
Well, we've got other neighbourhood plans coming forward today. We've had a whole series of neighbourhood plans come forward over the period of this plan to date. So I think it's really important that we have something that really holds it still while we actually go forward to do the review. So I accept that it's not my preferred plan ever. I never even voted in favour of it. But at the same time, I recognise the value and importance of it. So I just would actually, I will support this for the time being. But I just would really urge us to get on with doing the review, because I think it's overdue. And equally I accept the situation regarding the higher politics that are involved around this in terms of what's coming forward from central government. So yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Jackie. John.
Okay. Can I endorse what Councillor Thomas said and what Councillor Hodge said? I think without the JLP, we will be very vulnerable to speculative development and unacceptable development. You know, there are schemes coming forward that just do not comply with the JLP, and we have it there in order to defend South Hams against developments that really we don't want and we don't want to see. So I think this is an important recommendation, and I hope we all support it.
Thank you, John. Denise.
Yes, echo what people have said, and it's concerning and depressing to see in the report that we've got in the South Hams 13 times the gap between earnings and house prices is now nearly 13. So that's obviously, as it says, a major social and economic problem, and part of the affordable housing crisis that we've declared in the South Hams. So the focus, of course, should be affordable housing, as the report says in 6.8, 6.9, and it's also sad to see the planning system is not equipped to deliver the amount of affordable housing is needed in areas like ours, and also says a radical reform of the whole housing market, and state intervention is needed to prioritise increased delivery of social housing. Obviously we must implement the existing JLP affordable housing policies robustly. Our own South Hams housing offer is mentioned there in the report at 3.28 or thereabouts, where we're trying to focus on community housing, grassroots type housing coming from needs in our community, specifically and most frequently probably rural areas. So yes, having said that, looking forward to what's called the next iteration of the local plan, and I don't know if we have any idea when that might be.
Alistair, I don't know if you want to just answer that specific question there.
No problems at all, Chair. As Councillor Thomas alluded to in his earlier presentation, we do have that primary legislation set out by the Levelling from Generation Act. From what we understand, the government are over the course of this following year going to be doing a number of changes and looking to produce the primary legislation, which will give us the how, what, where and why and when of the new system coming forward. We're also likely to see further consultations on things like the National Development Management Policies and other changes to the NPPF. So it's over the course of this year that we're really going to start getting that further information so we can start doing a proper plan for the process that we will need to go through for future changes. Thank you.
Did you want to come on that specific case?
Well, actually, as a response to Councillor O'Callaghan, just to make the point, and I completely support what you were saying about affordable housing, Councillor O'Callaghan, but I think for the purpose of this meeting, it's really important to stress that what it actually says at 6.10 is that this affordable housing crisis is a result of systemic failure of the housing market and not the joint local plan. And I just think it's really, and I know you appreciate that, but I think it's really important just to clarify that. Thank you, Lee.
No, I think that's good. Mark, I'll come to you in a minute. I've got Nikki first, and then I'll come to you, Mark.
Thank you, Leader. I also welcome this. I mean, gosh, we could not be without a joint local plan. It wouldn't be worth it, but developers would have a field day. And so this is really a long-awaited, well documented report, and needs to happen. I just want to say that when the joint local plan is reviewed and when we do get the new dates, we need to look at the words should, maybe, could, and take them and look to take them out where we can, because I'm not going to go into detail today. I've got Mr. Brooks right opposite me staring, and although I would love to say what some of the things I'm thinking, I'm not going to, but those three words need to come out. and also a plea that at the next joint local plan review, Woolwell ward is put in with the thriving towns and villages where it should always have been, and not in the Plymouth local plan, because Woolwell is within the South Hams, not in Plymouth. So then at the next review, I'd like it to go into thriving towns and villages where it should always have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And I'm glad you talked about next review, because of course this in itself is a review, and so it is the next review. Absolutely, and point taken on that. Mark.
Chairman, thank you. I won't repeat a lot of the things that have been said by other members, as they're very valid. I think I would back up Councillor Hopwood on some of the wording used in the next review of the JLP. But I welcome this. It's a robust assessment and an excellent response. And I think what we've seen with the JLP, even if we've got criticisms of it and we believe that areas are weak, it has provided us with the strength to respond in planning in a very definite way. And I think the thing is, what we're looking at here is we will need to respond, as Mr. Wagstaff has said, to the constant changes that seem to be coming out from government about planning, which may or may not be helpful. But what we've got here in this assessment allows us to continue going forward until we've got that thorough detail. And, I can only sort of applaud the work that constantly goes in on planning, and to see that we make sure that we keep the standards as high as we can, and that we go into the next review of the JLP in a very, very positive way, and we respond to the government changes there to allow us to do what we can in this area to protect the area that we love. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Dan, you want to come back?
Yeah, I just want to come back on the vocabulary, Leader. I think it's very important. Councillor Hopwood and Councillor Long both raised it. Look, I mean, officers work really, really hard to make sure that we go as far in terms of the musts as we can, that we can actually manage, that we know that the plan will actually be approved. There is plenty of room for shoulds and mights in the supplementary planning document. But when it comes to the plan, officers I know will always try to make it as clear as they possibly can, relying on the SPD as a background document. I don't think that's going to change going forward. I think the purpose of today's exercise is just to agree that what we've got is solid. It really is. And we got that supplementary planning document behind it as well. And moving on, we will, in the fullness of time, we'll make the reviews as we're allowed to, as we see fit, in the interest of the best planning policies for the people of the South Hams. And with your permission, Leader, on at that point, I'd like to move the recommendations, please, if I may.
Thank you, Dan. Can I have a seconder? John B. Happy to second. And any more? No, in which case, could I have a show of hands, those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Right, agenda item 9, the climate change update in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly climate adaptation plan. John, I don't know if you obviously this isn't our plan, but we've been asked to...
Other than supporting it, I haven't really got a lot to say. I mean, Adam probably would have had a lot to say, but I think he's on holiday at the moment.
Drew, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. I mean, like I said, it's not our plan, but we've been asked to to support it in its adaptation. The plan. Yeah.
No, I mean, I would just add that one of the recommendations from internal audit was that we have an adaptation plan, and this piece of work actually delivers that on our behalf, enables us to link in with all the other agencies, and, to deal with the known impacts of climate change. And also the report also includes in the appendix an update on a lot of the activity that we're doing at the moment on climate change and biodiversity. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Jackie, I know that we've got it coming to county as well. This exact same.
I don't know if people heard the news this morning, but we've hit 1.5, which was the limit we were supposed to try and avoid hitting. It was on the weather that is being talked about today, and that's a lot. That's to do with the heat in our seas. Seas are warmer than they've ever been. The last year has been one of the warmest, and adaptation obviously is part of how we have to cope going forward. But also we need to be much more strong, probably, on how we're going to actually address and make changes to transition to a net zero carbon situation across the planet, let alone in this country or even in this district. So I think, by looking at what other people are doing and working with them and aligning ourselves with them is a really strong thing to do. It helps us to kind of, I'm all about recycling, so let's just recycle some of their ideas and fit in with their ideas, as well as looking at where ours kind of do or don't sit in. Sometimes we can be stronger, and that's fantastic. But if we're not going as far as we could, because what we can see that they're suggesting tightens us a little bit, then it means that more of us are all rolling in the same direction, and that's really a big strength when it comes to making real change. So I think this is a really good thing to actually support. And I also just would say that I think the work we're doing in the biodiversity stuff and adaptation work we're doing ourselves within John's remit, I think is really good as well. So just thank you.
No, thank you, Jackie. Are there any other people who want to comment on that? So, John, are you happy to move the recommendations there? Yeah. And can I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Jackie, thank you. Can a show of hands, all those in favour, please?
That's 7 in favour. Thank you, Leader.
Those against?
None against.
Abstentions?
With 1 abstention.
Thank you. Right. Agenda item 10. Home for Ukraine Scheme and Afghan Relocation Assistance Programme. Denise.
Thank you very much. Just wonder if I can give you a couple of updates on housing briefly before that. You may have seen in the budget there was something of interest to South Hams. The tax relief concessions were scrapped for holiday lets and other concessions for holiday lets, which may help to balance out our rental markets in favour of more long-term rents. That's the idea, but it's not coming in until April next year, April 25. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And more locally, I mentioned our South Hams housing offer earlier. Just to tell you that we've had a number of positive conversations with landowners, which is exciting news. Early days yet, of course, so I'm afraid I can't give too many details on what they are. The information on the South Hams housing offer is online on the council's website. You can go and have a look at it. Lots of, I think, pretty well laid out information on our community supported housing and how we can help our communities to bring forward affordable housing schemes. And there's links to useful information, frequently asked questions on how we, our housing teams are using our expertise, open their homes, and sponsored figure of 249 Ukrainians in our area. That's 121 families. South Hams Council team has magnificently helped to support guests and hosts. And the hosts, of course, have also been stars in volunteering, and we wouldn't have been able to help so many people without them stepping up. Council's also supporting Afghan families fleeing conflict and has welcomed 3 Afghan families. In doing this work, we've accessed the Local Authority Housing Fund government funding, and rounds 1 and 2 so far, we have bought 11 properties from the open market in the Sherford and Ivybridge areas. These are being used to support the families in question and can also be used to support local housing need, which is, of course, growing, reflecting the situation across the country. One of the properties can immediately be used for local general need, and this all helps our stock of temporary accommodation to ease homelessness pressures. Generally, across the South Hams, I think Izzy Blake, our head of housing, referred to this. That there are currently, I've got a figure of 48 households in temporary accommodation, of which 8 of those are families. We're also in the process of buying 9 flats in the Kingsbridge area. All this will help to reduce our costs and reliance on the so-called pay nightly accommodation, sort of B&Bs and hotel type accommodation. The LAHF project came in on time for us and under the budget approved by the executive by nearly £100,000, so that can be recycled into other affordable housing projects. And that's also, of course, positive news. I've got with me today, where is Mr. There he is. I was going to say he's behind me, but he's not. I'm very pleased to say that we are joined in the meeting today by Steve Damond, who's our excellent resettlement lead for the council. And he should be able to answer any questions which you may have about the Homes for Ukraine scheme and Afghan resettlement and our response to it. Steve and his team of 3 work hard to ensure that homes are ready and available for the guests, and they're made to feel welcome and that they can integrate into our community. I'll kick off if that's okay. Steve was asking, can you tell us a bit more about the work that you do, and then we can obviously open it up to any questions people may have.
Of course, thank you for having me. So when we get notified of any new guest arrivals, we've got a duty to visit the sponsor and the host just to check the accommodation over, make sure it's going to be safe for their arrivals. If we identify any hazards, we will look to work with them and give words of advice on how they can be mitigated. At the point the guests arrive, we then have to visit the guests and do welfare checks, make sure that everything's okay, make them aware of all the excellent provisions that we've got within the area in order to help them settle in. And then it continues throughout their journey, really. So once they've settled, we then help them out with ESOL provision for English lessons, help them apply for the benefits they're eligible for, and then help them hopefully into employment as well. We've worked really hard with a lot of our guests to get into employment, and the figure is very, very high. And then it continues into housing when the host-guest arrangement comes to an end. We support them into their own housing, and then it continues right up until the point that they feel it safe to return home, in which case we close the loop and engage with local schools, etc., to make sure that they're aware that the children are returning and not to expect them. So we support our guests for as much as we can all the way through. The same with the hosts. We're on call to hosts every day, and they've got all of our details and able to get hold of us so that we can help them out. Slightly different in terms of the Afghans, in that the support that we have to provide for them is a lot more intensive. So before arrivals, we speak to local schools for etc. to find out what placements they have, what school years to avoid, so that we're not putting pressure on the local community. And then when the guests arrive, again, we support them with everything we can to flourish in the area.
Thanks, Steve. Has anyone got any questions for Steve?
Can I just, this isn't why I wanted to speak, but can I just ask you, when they go into employment, are they allowed to stay in the UK indefinitely, or is there a time when they have to go back?
So when Ukrainians first arrive, they get, or up until the 19th of February, they got a visa for 3 years. And then within the last 3 months of that, they can apply for an 18-month extension. The Ukraine nation and Ukrainian government want their guests back, want their residents to return. So at the moment, they're not getting permanent residency.
Jonathan, Councillor Hawkins?
Can I just come in? We have a trustee of a Dartmouth District Food Bank, and we go there most Friday mornings to assist. We have a number of Afghan residents and also Ukrainian residents who come and use the bank, which is, absolutely delighted to help them and assist them. One of the biggest problems they're having is actually finding employment, and I don't know if there's anything we can actually try and do to assist with that. There was one particular resident who came last week, and he was in a real state of desperation almost. That he wanted to work, he was desperate to work, but he just couldn't find anything. He'd contacted the council as well, and it's perhaps maybe the council could assist in this. I just thought I should raise it. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the families in Dartmouth, the new arrivals of Afghan nationals, all three of them have got employment within the last week. It's going to be seasonal employment, but it's a fantastic start, and it's a real good news story for how much they've been welcomed into the community. One of the families don't have any English whatsoever, and the fact that they've been offered employment is fantastic.
That is absolutely great news. Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson?
It's not a question, but just to say, I think this district council is a lot to be proud of in terms of its welcoming and its work with people coming in, needing sort of refugees, as coming in from war zones and, refugees. I think it's really impressive, actually. I mean, it was really impressive with the Syrians that came in. And I think the combination of working, and I've kind of been caught between the two a couple of times in terms of helping people who are here, but needing an interpreter. Devon County Council has interpreters and things like this available, so there's a good sort of backdrop of support. But I think just the way that it's been working in a very smooth and well sort of supported. I know we've got a lot to be grateful for, the government making some money available, but I think the fact that people have opened their doors as well, I think it's just win-win all round, and I think it's a lot to be. It's a really good news story. So, and thank the officers, because I know it's quite hard sometimes, isn't it, to find things when you feel like you're up against it. Thank you.
Councillor Hopwood, you got another question?
I presume we're on to general questions now, are we? On the report?
Yeah, no, I think Denise has taken over. So.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I don't.
I'm on a roll.
I know.
I welcome the change. Just generally, this report is excellent, and the information in it is excellent. And I think we need to acknowledge that this is no mean feat for people to open their doors and welcome these people in. I think we need to take our hats off to residents, not only in the South Hams, wherever they live in the country, who have opened their doors and let these people live as part of their lives for as long as they have, and the councils who help them with employment, with integrating into our society. I welcome what I've heard this morning. It's a really interesting topic, and one that I don't think we as lay people realise is so involved from the minute they come into the country to the minute they leave again. And I pray that they go back to a better state, although I don't think they will, than they came from. And I just, take my hat off to everybody involved, but especially the people that welcome them into their homes. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan.
I hesitate to say anything now. Am I allowed to say anything? Oh.
Denise, I think we've got, it says John and Dan and then John.
Very quick specific question, Leader, if I may. Welcome the report. At 4.2, there is reference to the challenges with our Ukrainian guests obviously not having any background history, and the team working with landlords and agents to support. Can I just ask very briefly, what does that look like?
Extremely challenging. So when we spoke to the landlords at the start, they were very open and honest with us. In the housing crisis, they can advertise a property and be inundated with applications, so they close it within a matter of hours. And our guests, with their background and everything, they're certainly not top of the list. I've got a foot in both camps. I work as part of the housing team as well. We've been fortunate with a lot of the customers that have come across from Ukraine, multi-generational families. So we're working a lot with joint tenancies and those sorts of things to double up on the income and the welfare benefits they're eligible for. So we've had great success through that route. And the success through that route also means that we're not negatively impacting upon the houses for the general population as well. So overall, we've been really successful. In the last 12 months, we haven't had the need to use temporary accommodation at all through the prevention work we've done. So far, it's going well, but it is a challenge.
Can I just thank you for so splendidly answering the questions I didn't ask in a really good way?
Okay, so a comment and a question. The comment is really, I don't know how many people are awake at 5:45 and listen to the Farming Today programme, but there was a very interesting piece about the Apricot Centre and the work they've been doing with refugees. I don't know if you're aware of it. There 20 or 30 of them, and they're helping them with, I mean, it's about social well-being more than anything else, and helping them grow things. And a lot of them come with quite a lot of culinary expertise, and they cook for each other, and it's I think it's a really valuable contribution to their sort of settling in. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's a good piece of work. And the question was that you made reference to how dealing with the Afghani refugees was more intense, in quotes. Could you elaborate on that as to the reasons behind it?
So a lot of our Ukrainian guests come over and they're residing with their hosts. So where we're helping them and helping the host as well, they've kind of got someone already within the area. So for orientation and finding their way around, their host is helping them. Our Afghan nationals are arriving completely out of the blue. They're flying over. The ones that we received previously, that our last set of guests only flew into the country the day before. So we're having to show them all around the area. Any kind of health or medical needs, we're having to make sure they get addressed and make sure they understand how to get around, how to get to the doctors, how to get bank accounts and everything. So it's due to the fantastic work of our hosts, really, that we are doing less kind of with the Ukrainians, because the hosts are stepping up and doing a lot more than the word host suggests.
The cultural difference is not so chasmic.
It hasn't played a part as of yet. It's purely due to the good work of the host in the area.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Can I suggest that we do more than just note this report? I'd like to propose that there be an amendment to the recommendation that states that the executive thanks the officers for the positive progress of the council's participation in homes, etc., and then notes the conclusion. I think we really, the officers have done a terrific job on behalf of the council, and it is so successful that I think at least we could do is mention them in the recommendation arising out of this. So I'd like to suggest to make that slight amendment to the recommendation.
Happy to formally second that amendment, Chairman.
Yeah, and I mean, Denise, as your report, are you happy to take that in? I mean,
Well, more than happy.
Yeah, good.
Totally agree.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Has anyone else got any questions for Steve? Steve, they have them?
Mark.
Okay. Sorry.
Chairman, thank you, and Councillor Callaghan, as you're running this section. I just have a question of sort of turnover amongst Ukrainian families, and sort of how that has looked and how that's been sort of, I know you've alluded to the sort of when people do move out, but what the turnover is. And I think the difficulty of people sort of moving out, and I think the recognition of the hosts themselves, and can I say, the only feedback I get from both hosts and the Ukrainian guests is very positive about the council's contribution to them being here and the support they've given. So I think that's a key, and I welcome that change in thanking the officers, because I think the work you've done right from the beginning. And Steve, I was constantly in contact with you right at the beginning, because I was getting a lot of contact as well. And I think the response that you gave, the other officers, the housing team as well, and I have to say other officers within the council, you know, at that time. But I'd just like to know sort of what the turnover is and how many are actually, I know it's very difficult in Ukraine at the moment, but how many families are sort of going back?
So from the groups we've received, we've still got 54 in host accommodation. The hosts were asked to initially open up their homes for a minimum of 6 months. 19 of those are approaching the 2-year anniversary, so it really shows how fantastic that's been. A further 26 in private rental accommodation. So about 40% of the guests that actually arrived here to settle have moved on, with the majority of them returning to Ukraine. We have had a few instances recently where people have tried to return to Ukraine and then ended up it wasn't suitable, so they've re-returned to the UK. But it's, yeah, so we've got sort of 40% that have attempted to return home, and the majority haven't reappeared within our borough as of yet. District.
Steve, we were talking earlier and you mentioned there was an unexpected family reunion that happened. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, of course. So obviously nobody wants to be a customer of my team, but with the Afghan cohort is relatively new to us. We spoke to a lot of organisations close by to get some ideas from them, and we managed to get an interpreter who is absolutely fantastic. He fled Afghanistan himself 10 years ago and set up home in the southwest. So we spoke with him and explained what we wanted from him and what we needed from him, and we arranged to meet on the day that the guests were due to arrive. So of the 8.2 million call from a family member the night before to say, I know you're in the southwest, I'm also going to the southwest. So it turns out the interpreter we booked was actually a family member of one of the residents that we welcomed to Dartmouth. So this gent fled 10 years ago, not knowing what's going to happen to his family in his home country, not knowing if they were going to survive, and to witness them meeting again is a very, very special moment, and it was it was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a slightly less happy one was I think a Ukrainian guest's dog had come in, and due to the bureaucracy had ended up in Blackpool, I think you said. But I think and of course pets are very important to people in crisis. But I think there was a happy resolution. If you quickly tell us about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the volume of guests departing at the very start of the invasion, any guests that came over had to be quarantined until they could evidence that they had the right vaccines. One of our fantastic sponsors in South Hams drove to Poland to pick up the guest and the guest's dog, but the dog wasn't booked onto the ferry. So it wasn't booked on properly, so it wasn't booked off properly. So we had a lost dog, but luckily we tracked it down to a quarantine centre in Blackpool, and guest and dog were reunited reasonably quickly. Yes.
Excellent shaggy dog story. There's thanks to the team, as we've put that quite rightly too. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm giving you more work, I'm afraid. Can we suggest an informal briefing for all members on the subject? Because obviously we've got a lot of members here, but not everyone. So if that's something you'd feel able to do,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
arrange that. Thanks very much, Steve, and I will move the recommendation, unless anyone else.
Second.
No, okay, so that's been proposed and seconded. Can I just say, I mean, lovely to hear those heartwarming stories in such troubled times. I mean, that's lovely. But also, I just heard a lot of the sort of emotive issues around it, and thank you so much. I think it's absolutely right that we support officers who are doing a fantastic job. But just to say, I think we should recognise the support that we've been given from central government in respect of the local authority housing fund, and also the previous administration in setting that in motion, that we've now got these extra houses. So thank you for that presentation, Denise, and thank you, Steve. They're very lucky to have you on the team. Yeah, no, that's great. Right, so it's proposed and seconded. Can we have a break? So we have you all back in here at 20 to 12 for Nikki's show. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.